Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls of all ages, House of Havoc proudly presents their podcast tag team champions of the world. The big guy, Chris Johansson, the muskrat Alicino, and as always, I'm that J-I-M-M-Y, the death of Kayfabe.
The summer of 2002 was a time of transition in the WWE. Back in March, the WWF had lost a lawsuit to the World Wildlife Federation and was forced to change the name of the company from the World Wrestling Federation to World Wrestling Entertainment. Stone Cold Steve Austin, arguably one of the biggest stars in the history of the WWF, had taken his ball and gone home. The Rock, Dwayne Johnson, was on his way out to pursue his acting career. Hulk Hogan's most recent run had come to an end. The Attitude Era was over, and a new era, the Ruthless Aggression Era, was taking shape. The next big thing, Brock Lesnar would emerge as the top guy in the company. The returning Shawn Michaels makes his in-ring return, beginning the run that would cement his legacy as one of the greatest wrestling performers of all time. The crop of phenomenal new talent, including John Cena, Batista, and Randy Orton, would soon be coming into their own. The summer of 2002 was certainly a new and interesting time in the WWE that culminated in one of the most loaded SummerSlams in history. Take a journey back to summer of 2002 with the boys from the Death of Kayfabe as we look at the SummerSlam 2002. This is Flashback Friday.
So let's be honest for a second. I'm wearing Saatchi di Dinero. This hoodie, this has got to be the most comfortable thing that I've worn in a while. So if you're going to wear this, make sure you wear it on Monday. Why?
Because it's motivated money-making Monday morning, baby.
And if it's not Monday, you better make sure it's on a Friday.
It's Fresh Cut Friday on Fresh Fit Friday.
And we got codes for the holiday season. What are they?
The code is HAVOC, HAVOC, at checkout for 10% off your total purchase. That's SaatchiDiDinero.com. Brand new release, brand new arrivals, the new Saatchi hoodie. It's got the logo embossed on the hood. They're available in clay and gray blue. You want to go get those fast.
Come on, go get it now.
Saatchi di Dinero, always authentic, never counterfeit. The 15th annual SummerSlam took place on August 25th in Nassau Veterans Memorial Coliseum, making it the first of the Big Four WWE pay-per-views to complete the New York metropolitan area Triple Crown, having SummerSlam already did the Garden 3 times and Izod Center twice. Total attendance was 14,797 people. And that's that, right?
Well, it was the first under the WWE banner.
All right. Also, first pay-per-view under the WWE banner. Just had the change from WWF May of 2002.
This card had 8 matches, 7 singles matches, and 1 tag match. The show opened up Kurt Angle defeating Rey Mysterio, followed by Flair defeating Chris Jericho, then Edge over Eddie Guerrero, the Un-Americans, Christian and Lance Storm, becoming champions, defeating Booker T and Goldust, Rob Van Dam defeating Chris Benoit, The Undertaker defeating Test, Shawn Michaels defeating Triple H, and the main event, Brock Lesnar going over The Rock. So without further ado, let's kick it off with how we feel about the first match of the night. Kurt Angle, Rey Mysterio, what did you like about it? What did you not like about it? I know one of the main points is that the match didn't go on very long, right? But 2 talented workers. The whole card featured many Hall of Famers, future Hall of Famers. What do you think?
I mean, at the time, Kurt Angle was probably the top wrestler in the world. I mean, just in overall performance, in-ring presence, and he's going up against a high flyer like Mysterio. You couldn't ask for a hotter opener, in my opinion. James?
Yeah, no, it's a fantastic way to open the show. Great way. If you're a faster, smaller, high-flying wrestler, watch this match, learn how to work with a more grounded, more technical opponent. Definitely. Other than the finish, they botched the ankle lock off of the top rope.
Yeah, they did.
Other than that, damn near perfect. And I got to give the shout out. That's the way you do a falsie on the 619 West Coast Pop.
Exactly.
Great kick out, great falsie. That's how you do it. Like, we do too many of the nonsensical falsies today.
Right.
That's one you really appreciate.
Well, it was like the definition of a false finish. Like, you didn't know, the match could have been over right then, but it wasn't,
And, like, great sell job.
Sure.
Spiked him on his head.
Yep.
Yeah, it's definitely a good way to open the show. I think it definitely got the crowd involved. And then now you move to the second match of the night, Ric Flair versus Chris Jericho. And a note here, both of the first two matches ended by submission. But Jim, what's your take on that one?
I mean, it's classic Ric Flair. It's we've come to know as classic Jericho. I got to give the shout out to the Flair heel storytelling in this match. He did 3 or 4 things that nothing gets done today. He has him in the suplex, has him so their bodies are blocking the ref, and he's hitting him with the short closed fist punches. This is important because closed fist punches are illegal in professional wrestling.
Right.
But today Roman Reigns' finisher is a fucking punch. So
Big Show's was too.
Yeah, for a certain point, Big Show's was too.
Well, that was when Vince changed it. Now back then, that's Flair was doing that as like a heel tactic.
Yeah,
the dirtiest player in the game.
Right.
Yeah.
There's the grab the rope and tap at the same time, the Phantom tap, and then he finishes him with the low blow into the figure 4 finish. So those were just 3 of the heel moves that you don't see as much today.
What so far, just in this brief time that we're doing this, the common thread is going to be how things were done then compared to how they're done now. And watching a lot of these older pay-per-views, when we go back and we do these Flashback Fridays, you're going to see it's like a history lesson. And just it's like you could take that as a class. Like these wrestlers today should watch some of these and get tips and tricks. And it's not all about how many loops and jumps you could do. It's about selling and making the match a story. And Flair and Jericho, 2 of the best who ever did it at creating a story in the ring.
Yeah, I agree with that. Quick note on the card though. Most of these matches, I mean, you want to talk about a very balanced card. Most of these matches are around 10 to 11, 12 minutes long, with the exception of, Rob Van Dam and Benoit went 16. Michaels and Triple H went 28. And then the main event went 16. A very balanced card and a short card. We spoke about that. They really got right into it, right down to business. I think the whole show was 247?
242, I think.
242?
Start to finish.
And that's the way it should be done.
Well,
which is great.
This is on the Peacock. I mean, it's probably got a little bit more with ads and whatnot because you got to remember they got to put all those. The advertising that they might have had back then, the deals that they had back then, they probably don't have now, so they can't show that on Peacock. So It's still at 3. I mean, you have to fill that 3-hour time period. But the timing of the show with the amount of matches,
it was very smooth.
But SummerSlam today goes 4.5, 5 hours long.
Right,
it's too long.
No,
Yeah,
the 8 matches and a 3-hour pay-per-view is basically perfect, especially if you time them out properly. And they did that with this.
My last piece on this match, if not very good, great professional wrestling match.
Yes,
we've gotten away from professional wrestling part of it over the last decade or so. Mm-hmm. So breath of fresh air.
So we're going to go to the third match, and I would just like to make another note that Angle, Mysterio, Flair, and Jericho, they'll probably all be in the Hall of Fame.
Oh, 100%.
Right? So,
three of them are already, no? Jericho not in yet? Flair's in twice.
I don't think Jericho's in
Angle's in. Mysterio will be in.
Yeah, and Jericho will be in.
And Jericho will be in. I mean, I'm just looking at it real quick.
And then Eddie Edge are both in already, right?
I see 2 guys that are very, that will not be in the Hall of Fame. Test will not be in the Hall of Fame unless, the WWE just runs out of guys. And
Lance Storm.
You could argue
you can make a lot of arguments for why he should be off camera.
Great worker, couldn't talk. But, I mean, basically everybody else is bona fide Hall of Famer.
Go down
Isn't that amazing,
though? Go down a list that everybody's been at the top of the game, not just in WWE, but across the business for the last 15 years. All of them were either trained by Lance Storm or trained by someone who Lance Storm trained.
Exactly.
He's the big daddy trainer.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So that's amazing. So you look at the card. You look at the card, and something that you don't see today, but you're seeing now is, well, I guess we won't know for 20 more years, right? But future Hall of Famers all over the place. Guys that are not out of their prime, most of them in their prime or becoming in their prime. So, like I said, it was well done. We'll go to the third match. Edge defeats Eddie Guerrero. They gave him 12 minutes, so it was the longest match thus far in that card.
And that was a SmackDown match, correct?
Yes, I believe so. Yes.
So this is the time period when the SmackDown show was better than the Raw show, in my opinion, and that roster, the SmackDown roster, loaded. I mean, if you look at just Angle, Mysterio, Edge, Eddie Guerrero, Undertaker, I mean, Booker T. I think Booker T and Goldust were they Raw or SmackDown at that point?
That was a Raw match.
Okay. But I'm just saying, you have Edge, Eddie Guerrero, Kurt Angle, Rey Mysterio, Undertaker. Those are 5 bona fide Hall of Famers.
Yeah.
And I think Heyman was writing SmackDown at that point, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
I think we all could agree that Edge Guerrero right now in the present day WWE landscape or present day wrestling landscape would be a dream for everybody.
Oh,
to see
100%.
that now. Like I think we undervalued. Well, at least me, I undervalued it then, and
I think Eddie.
I damn sure wouldn't undervalue it now. You know what I mean? What do you think
Eddie
about
was
the
an
match?
artist in the ring, and as most of the world's most famous artists, they don't really get their recognition until the
Until they're gone, right?
Which is what happened with Eddie, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
Eddie, we miss you. The business needs you.
Yeah.
But if you're telling a story, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. If you're telling a story, these are the two guys you're going to tell a story with. Edge is a master at telling a story in the ring, and Eddie just and two guys who could work their asses off. You know what I mean?
They went with the Attack-A-Limb storytelling vehicle device here. So I kind of have two things about that. You like it because it's the easiest way to tell a story. I don't think I'm breaking new ground saying this. You ask any trainer, they're going to tell you the easiest way to tell a real story in the ring is to go with the Attack-A-Limbs. Whether you bring up in a promo that you knew that they had a bum shoulder and you were going to attack it, or something happens where they just hit the steel steps and now we're going after the shoulder.
That's what the Andersons were famous for. Ole and Arn Anderson. They would pick a body part, attack the body part for the entire match, and it would work itself into a story.
Well, it definitely works itself in when you got a guy who's a high flyer too, who got a guy who his finisher is the top rope. You know.
Well, and then they're also you're attacking Edge's shoulder for the spear, right?
For the spear, right? Exactly.
It's always gonna work in that way. They did the Fujiwara armbar. Mm-hmm. They do a whole bunch of real technical shit by Eddie here. The Attack-A-Limb, you like it. It's like a double-edged sword because you like it, but it's almost a little hacky. You know, at a certain point, you kind of grade out. Not at this point in time, but especially today's landscape. You get to a certain point of skill level where you don't have to. If you're relying on the Attack-A-Limb every time you're in the ring, not great. Did love it here. Felt like it had a big fight feel. Good spot at the top of the card for these guys.
Yep.
So now we'll move to the only tag team match on the card, which is not something you see every day now either, right? I mean,
just one tag match.
Yeah.
Well,
right?
they only had
on a SummerSlam.
They only had one set of tag belts at this point.
Right. I guess you're right. On a big
so
four,
did they jump shows, or they were just on Raw?
Who's this?
The Un-Americans. Whoever the tag champs were. Tag champs exclusive to Raw at this point.
If I remember correctly, I think they were mainly on Raw. You know, I think they spent most of their time on Raw. But wasn't Test a member of the Un-Americans?
Yes,
also?
he was. Yes, I was just about to say that.
And this was at the same time.
Test interfered in this match.
Yeah. So the Un-Americans, which is Christian, Lance Storm, and Test, and Test is on the card later. But Christian and Lance Storm, they defeat Booker T and Goldust. And
you said to become before to retain.
To retain. You're right.
Just
yes,
wanted
you
to
are
correct
right.
you on that.
They had a 9.5 minute match, a little bit over. What do you think about it, Whitey?
You know, it was a solid tag match. I think at the time Booker T and Goldust were doing some of their best work as a tag team. You know, I mean, Booker T had his run with his arm heat, obviously, but this was Goldust kind of coming back from, they didn't really know what to do with him, and putting him with Booker T, it shouldn't have worked, but it worked brilliantly.
Yeah, all right, I agree.
I think they told a decent little story in the ring. Right guys went over because they were still trying to build the Un-American faction. I mean, not really too much. I mean, again, 10-minute tag match. It's hard for everybody to get their shit in.
Yeah, and it's mid card. Like this is what it is. It's a mid card in a big event, and like we just spoke about, you had 6 Hall of Famers come before you. It's tough to there's going to be a lull at some point.
But and you had 6 Hall of Famers come before you, but you got 3, if not 4, in this match.
Right. Exactly. I know.
It's insane.
But you give 4 guys 9 minutes to work, right? So what do you think? What are your thoughts?
Now, this was me taking my notes in real time on my rewatch a couple of days ago. Not necessarily a bad match, but the least entertaining on the card so far.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. All right, so we'll move on.
Again, it's a tag match where 4 guys trying to get all this shit in, and all 4 guys are singles guys. Now, I mean, Christian, yes, he was a tag guy
for a long time.
Booker T was a tag guy, but at this point, all 4 guys were singles. So they're gonna want to get their single stuff in.
Yeah, and it's different. It's completely different.
The one thing I want to say about Goldust before we keep going, I feel like you might be different about this because you were older. You could have already seen it. I feel like for our age, like the Goldust character made it hard to realize how great of a goddamn worker this guy was.
100% for me.
Always was a solid. He's 100%. 50-something years old. He's getting it.
My appreciation for Goldust came later in life. like I started to be like, wow, this guy is really.
When he went on the run with Cody as Stardust, that's when I was like, "This who could outwork this guy
Yeah,
right now?" At
that's
48
like
years
that's
old.
what I'm thinking. It was
From day one, he's been the most adaptable wrestler because he started as the Golden Boy. He was Dusty's son coming up through WCW, and then they brought him over to the WWF, and they put him in a feud with the $1 Million Man. And if you just think about all the different things that he's done in his career, it's amazing. Most adaptable wrestler there is.
right. So we go after the tag team match. Now we have an Intercontinental title match. We got Rob Van Dam defeating Chris Benoit, who was the champion. Right? Correct?
Chris Benoit was the
Yeah,
champion.
and Rob Van
Go
Dam.
ahead, what
Can
do
I
you
just
think?
say something before we get into any Benoit? I think you have to say something. Is that I know forever his legacy will be tarnished, but I remember Benoit as one of the greatest wrestlers in the history of wrestling. The guy was phenomenal, and I don't condone what he did, with his family and
course
how
not.
everything ended up. I mean, it's horrendous. But just to preface this, if I speak glowingly about Chris Benoit, it's because he was a phenomenal wrestler and not because of what he did. And I just want to make that clear.
Yeah.
I think you have to say that because we're going to be doing these Flashback Fridays.
And he's going to come up a lot.
He's going to come up. So,
I feel this way. I've always felt this way. Benoit is one of the greats. He really was one of the greats. Would have gone down as, maybe making a top 20 list one day if what happened didn't happen. But I don't can we not paint Benoit to be as evil? Because we know now it was CTE. We didn't have a word for it then, but we've proven it was CTE. And watch him miss that diving headbutt in this match.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a concussion.
Yeah.
He did that move fucking 300 nights a year.
Yes.
Vince was not held responsibly enough for what happened, in my opinion.
Right.
But it's just different, You see, I understand what you're saying, but you didn't
We
know.
could do a whole pod just on the Benoit
You didn't.
story.
You didn't.
I just wanted to put it out there. I don't condone what he did.
Yeah.
No one does. How
And-
could you?
And I can't defend it in any way, shape, or form. But I will defend the fact that in ring, there at this time period, there wasn't too many people that were better than Chris Benoit.
Right. So what do you think about? We'll go straight to you. What do you think about that match?
I mean, you got two of the best workers in the business at this time going together, and RVD was on his way up. Benoit was kind of still at that mid card level. He wasn't until next year. That's when he was going to.
Keep going.
This was when he was going to take that next step, Benoit. But at this point, he was mid card, and again, they had a little bit more time than some of the other matches, which was great. Really helped them out.
I think Van Dam for me, I did enjoy it. I did enjoy what he brought to the table. It was always something different. I never, ever, ever, in my opinion, viewed Van Dam as a world champion, like a main event player. I did view Benoit that way.
Were you watching consistently at this point, or are you like a little?
I was 10.
Okay.
So it's like, yeah, I was, but
Well, he was this.
as much as a 10-year-old can, you know what I mean? As much as a 10-year-old can absorb,
Right.
is how much I was kind of absorbing at that point. Now looking back, I still feel that way. Am I wrong for that?
No, I mean, here's the thing about RVD is that no company ever put their full trust in him except for Paul Heyman when he was in ECW,
Right.
Because he was a huge pot smoker,
And
not
he-
only a pot smoker but a pot advocate. You know what I mean?
And he would get in trouble.
And he would say to Vince things like, "Listen, I'm gonna pay you up front. I'm gonna get every time you give me a drug test, I'm gonna get popped for it." So Vince would never fully say that, go with him.
How can I put him over?
When,
How can I make him the guy when?
Yeah, he's telling me he's gonna go.
What do you think
Which
about
is
the
a
match?
it's a crazy idea to think about that because
At this point,
but even then, all these guys are doing fucking opiates and painkillers and drinking their fucking face off every night. This guy wants to deal with
Yeah,
putting
but
his
that-
body through hell.
but
With
it's
a
like
little bit
what
of
he
weed.
said. It's like what he said. These flashback episodes are
Yeah,
history
it's a lot of
lessons.
hindsight.
They are history lessons.
This took place in August of 2002. I mean, not till August of this year will it be 20 years, and already 20 years ago, the way pot is looked at now compared to back then.
I mean, right now, you take RVD of then, put him right now, he's probably a world champ.
he's top guy in the world.
he's
Yeah.
top-
That's
he's
what I'm
the top
saying.
guy on Dynamite,
He
probably.
was revolution. I mean, even with Mysterio and Guerrero and Benoit and all these other high flying guys, he was doing things that you couldn't even think were unimaginable. in the
Right.
ring. You
That's
know
what I'm saying. Any take on the match before we move on?
They told a really good story. It was a slower match, but it was very technical and super intense. And reiterate it. Benoit really was one of the greatest.
Benoit comes through the curtain, and it's already got a big fight feel.
Right.
Just walking through
100%.
the curtain, it's like
He had that ability though.
right. And he was like a little guy. I mean,
Yeah.
he was jacked up, but
Well,
he
yeah.
was not. He was not like a Brock
5'9",
Lesnar
right?
or-
5'10",
Yeah.
yeah. So that match went 16 and a half minutes. So, you know,
They got some time.
They definitely got some time, and that I think that built momentum back up for this card. Now, if you say that, I think we all agree. If you say that was the slowest match, the tag team match, I think this starts building back up to that. Okay, we're on the right track again. So now you go Undertaker. He defeats Test, and I know you have things you want to say, so I'll go to Jim first. How do you feel about it?
First and foremost, American Badass Taker, amazing as always.
This was at the end of it, though.
Yeah,
I mean, he had another, not even a year left with this character.
and they had already. This was the not the Rollin' version of the Dead Man
No.
Walking song, which bummed me out a little bit. Test fucking sucked. I'm just gonna say it is what it is. God rest his soul.
So much potential.
Sucked.
So much
Size,
potential.
6'7", 290 is the only reason he was where he was. If he was sick, like regular size, 6'2", 240,
Regular size. I'm sitting
Well,
here
regular size for the
5'9",
business.
150.
regular
Like,
size for the business at the time. He couldn't talk. You say he could work, and maybe he could, but like he worked like big guy shit, like slow,
No,
boring big guy shit. If you're gonna be a big guy, you got to give me more than a side slam, a big boot, and a choke slam.
One note before I go to Whitey or his take on it. You did say that you believe Test got way too much offense in.
That's what I was just about to say. It made me mad watching how much offense he got in on Taker in this match.
Well, you understand this was the era of Taker trying to put everybody over. Taker, he didn't have the title. He wasn't
Right.
involved in the main event. They were like, listen, you're going to start putting guys over. And Taker, being the team player that he was, he said, I'm going to take Test and I'm going to try to get this guy over. And it's just, they didn't have good chemistry because nobody had good chemistry with Test. And he tried to put the guy over. I'm going to give you, here, kid, I'm going to give you. And Test just,
It is what it is.
here's the thing. You put Test, you put RVD, you put Jericho, you put Flair in a room, and you say to somebody who's not a wrestling fan, who's the wrestler? Who are they going to pick?
Test.
But again, you can only go so far on looks because the guy had an incredible look to him, but that's about all he had.
Yeah. So would you say that this is the worst match on the card for you?
No, I think mine's still the tag match.
And
Can't put
do you
any
agree,
pay-per-view
disagree?
match with Taker as the worst.
Yeah, you can't. It's hard.
And
to
that's weird, right?
Yeah.
Because his work rate. All right, so here we go. Unsanctioned street fight. At that time, it was Shawn Michaels defeating Triple H. All right, now before this is probably going to be the longest one we talk about, right?
We got time.
Yeah, they went
got plenty of
20. They
time
went
to cover.
27 and a half minutes. So they got a very long time. They had a very big build up to this fight. The unsanctioned street fight. It had a big fight feel. It had a great, like we said, a great build up. So I'll go to you first, Whitey. How do you feel about the results? And tell them about the aftermath of the fight. What happened after that kind of.
all right.
And the lead. Go on the lead into it.
Yeah, go ahead.
We know Sean leaves in 97.
So Sean 97 is 98. So he
98 he left.
He lost to. He was in a bad way at that point. He's heavily into drugs. He was at the biggest dick point of his career where he was just being a dick to everybody. He had Vince in his back pocket. Vince was letting him get away with anything because Vince looked at him like a son. So he left, 98. Hunter takes over DX. Sean kind of comes back in like a commissioner type role. He's, Commissioner Michaels, this and that. Goes away, is flirting with coming back. They bring him back as the leader of the NWO. So now it's Shawn Michaels, X-Pac, Kevin Nash, and The Big Show in like arguably the weirdest formation of the NWO that's ever been. Everybody hates it. It's not doing any kind of ratings when they're coming on, so they got to do something.
He's in a non-physical role still at this point.
He's doing tags and stuff like that, if I remember correctly. He wasn't really. I think he was more kind of the figurehead. And then they were like, we got to get away from this NWO, so we're going to put DX back together, Shawn and Hunter. But Hunter said the money's not in putting us back together, cross chopping and doing all that. The money's in us feuding because nobody had ever really seen that before. They worked together, but they never had a match together against one another in that whole time. I mean, maybe when Hunter was like the blue blood, I think they might have had like a little
Hurst Helmsley.
Yeah, so they might have had a match then, but they didn't really work together like that until this. So this is at the time when WWE, like if you watch the pay-per-view, they did that really awesome intro video. And this was at the height of when WWE was just doing amazing like compilations of the storyline and then the hype video.
Build-ups.
Like if you watch the WrestleMania 17 Rock and Austin,
amazing.
it's like if you don't want to watch that match after that, then you don't.
X7 was my generation. That they put that to my generation by Limp Bizkit, right?
Yeah, but this was there was like a 3-year run there where every video got you so hyped for a match, and this did that in this match.
Mm-hmm.
And
they still do it great. The problem is we see it 5 times from the start of the show to
right.
I need it once.
Right.
You want to do the pre-show? Do it once in the pre-show, and then don't play it again until right before they're about to walk.
Well, they never did it in the pre-show.
No, they didn't. At this point, you don't
just,
see it.
just before the match.
Which I think that's the way it needs to be done.
Right.
So the match itself, how do you feel?
Well, the thing is, they got the most time because at the time Vince had the most trust in Hunter because Rock was on his way out to go do movies, and even though Vince was in bed with Rock getting money for the Rock to go make, he had a piece of the Rock's contract
because he's the Rock.
Well, no, it was the way it worked was Vince got a percentage for every movie that The Rock did, and it's
why? Because he was under contract with WWE, or because he was using the namesake?
Vince kind of brokered the deal with The Rock and The Rock's agent, and they, you're gonna go do a movie. I need a piece of that movie that you do, especially if you're gonna use The Rock. But then The Rock, because Vince had helped him out so much, said here. I think I don't know if it's to this day, but for a long time, Vince got a piece of Rock's money for all the movies that he made.
Wow.
So anyway, Rock's on his way out. Stone Cold had taken his ball and gone home. So who's the next guy? I mean, Taker's your steadfast guy, but he's not your main event guy. At the time, Hunter was the main event guy. And so he said to Hunter, you guys are going to get the most. Obviously, this had the biggest package. This had the biggest buildup, the biggest storyline.
Mm-hmm.
And the match itself, it's like, I remember going into that match, I was in high school at the time and saying, can Michael still go? He's Triple H is arguably the top guy in the business at the point.
And this is post quad tear.
Yes.
So he's locked, cocked, and ready to rock.
Oh, yeah. I mean, this is the best he ever looked.
Because he came back from that quad tear, definitely was I don't want to say definitely, but he was probably doing some things in a needle.
Oh, I mean,
some anabars, some D-bars.
You see the veins and stuff. That,
He comes back like
ripped.
40 pounds of muscle
but
from
he got
pre-injury.
They people who work for WWE, when he came back from that quad injury and at the Garden, and he had the jean jacket and all that, and he came back,
badass
with the fucking at 260 with a 6-pack.
If you listen to that, he gets one of the biggest pops ever.
Yeah,
coming back out. So Vince was like, "All right, we're gonna hitch the wagon to this guy."
Of course,
and this is what a lot of people call the Reign of Terror, when he was on top of Raw, beating everybody. So this for him to go in there and lose to Michaels was a pretty big deal. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they had a pretty good match. I mean, Michaels was.
You say the best match of the night.
Match of the night for this,
bar none.
Yeah.
Do you agree with the result of Michaels going over?
Yeah, I think Michaels had to go over, and I think it was smart to let Triple H get his heat back because I think they had the rematch at Survivor Series in the Elimination Chamber.
Yeah,
yes, he was in the Elimination Chamber. Yeah,
I mean, or maybe they had before. What's the pay-per-view before Survivor Series? Whichever.
Was it? They usually did Elimination Chambers either at No Way Out.
Well, that was the first. That was the first Elimination Chamber because I think was Michaels the winner of the first one.
I'm not sure, but in the beginning,
Triple H.
In the beginning, they did them at No Way Out and
2003.
There was one other card. Vengeance. Those were the 2 cards they did them on.
If I'm almost positive, I think the first one was 2002 Survivor Series.
That would make sense.
And I think Michaels went over in that one. And I think him and Triple H had a rematch because he hit him with the sledgehammer, and that was like Triple H getting his heat back. So yeah, Michaels goes over, hits him with the sledgehammer, and I think Michaels was like in a wheelchair on Raw. And I think they did an angle where they wheeled him out, and then he jumped out of the wheelchair and super kicked Triple H, and then they had the rematch.
Right. Okay.
I will say this: SummerSlam, Big 4, arguably number 2 or number 3. Right? I mean, Royal Rumble's probably 2, SummerSlam's 3.
Yeah.
At this point, is Survivor Series 3?
No, Survivor Series was
always the distant 4th, right?
You know that they created Survivor Series to counteract Starrcade. Like Vince held up the pay-per-view companies because he was like, you're gonna show Starrcade, but guess what? I'm gonna do Survivor Series, and it was just a fuck you to Jim Crockett Promotions.
Right.
Because Starrcade was the WrestleMania.
That was their WrestleMania.
It was their WrestleMania. So in 1987, Vince said, I'm gonna run a pay-per-view on Thanksgiving night, and here's your choice: either you have the WWF and Survivor Series, or you can have Starrcade. You're not gonna have both. So it was a ploy, and that's when they moved Starrcade to Christmas.
Wow. And what do you think about the overall match itself?
So just the point I was making there with the whole pay-per-view thing. 8 matches, big card. This is the only gimmick match.
Yeah. But
This is the
it
only
wasn't a
match.
gimmick. In my opinion, it wasn't a gimmick just to be a gimmick. There was a perfect
Made
reason
sense.
there was
bad
a
blood.
gimmick.
It was
Yeah.
personal.
Yeah, it meant
And
something.
He had the broken back, so it was like, well, I can't sanction this. Get it? I understand that the unsanctioned thing. I understand it's kayfabe, the whole deal. I don't like the unsanctioned thing because if it's gonna be unsanctioned, get the ref out of there. If it's an unsanctioned match, why is a ref giving a sanctioned finish?
No,
I understand he's
it's
just there to
not.
count
But it's
the
not.
pin.
It's not sanctioned. You just need somebody to count the pin. So you need a referee in the match. I understand your point.
Yeah,
It just-
I get your
it kind
point.
of
It's
the
just-
unsanctioned thing kind of does this thing where it kind of makes kayfabe hard.
Well, the
You know what
story
I'm
the storyline is that we're going to allow you to have the match on our TV. We're going to allow you to have the match in our ring. You're going to use one of our referees, but it's not part of the WWE or F or whatever.
Right,
WWE.
right.
Like we're not. This is not sanctioned by us. We're not going to recognize who wins. Yes, it's going to go in the record books, but it's not. It's not. Like on your overall win-loss record, it's not going to count.
And did they ring a bell? Did they ring a bell at the start of this match? Because they shouldn't be.
I mean, even if
Like,
they did,
when they did the unsanctioned match on Dynamite a couple of
Yeah, like
weeks
the lights
ago,
out and all
the
that.
lights went out, the lights came back on. They didn't ring a bell to start it.
yeah.
They still had the ref too, which I get. You need
Listen,
somebody
You need a ref.
If that's one of the only cons to the match, that's pretty damn
That-
good.
Yeah, I mean
That was your favorite match on the card?
definitely.
All right,
Match of the
and
night.
I agree. At least in my opinion, I think getting the heat back on Triple H at the end was the right move by far.
Well, furthers the story.
Yeah, and they needed that.
And it works here because it's like you're at the end of the match, you're on this high of like, oh, Michaels is back. He's still the Heartbreak Kid. He's still the showstopper.
He still has it. So those next 2 matches they main evented, right? They had 2 more after that, or 1 more.
I don't think Michaels wrestled on the next pay per view, the September.
I'm saying the
pay-per-view.
next 2 times they faced off, they were both main events.
Yes.
Yeah, right. So they did the job. They did what they had to do.
Long term
And
storytelling.
long-term storytelling, which was a big thing back then, and it's
Well,
less of a
It's
thing
coming
now.
back. It's coming back.
It's
Yeah,
coming
it's-
back in the form of AEW, but we're gonna get into that. We're gonna get into
I
that
don't
later.
even think just in the form of AEW because look at what they're. Yeah, we'll get to it later. But the Paul Heyman Roman Reigns thing.
Oh,
I'm gonna
yeah.
argue
Oh,
that's-
right.
This story's been going on.
That's
18
fine.
months
That's a
now.
very
Oh, yeah.
long one. That's good. Yeah. So that was we'll call it the co-main event, right? It wasn't, but we call
Well,
it.
they pitched it as a main event.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Side notes to this that I just think we should bring up, right? Very very good segments in between the matches.
Yeah.
Bischoff, general manager of Raw, Stephanie McMahon, general manager of SmackDown.
Amazing.
Phenomenal back and forth banter.
When it meant something, like when the separation of the two companies, when it meant something, they were generally in a competition with one another.
Of course.
So this is a co-branded pay-per-view. So both general managers are there, and they're my match is going to be better than your match. I mean, that's just great storytelling.
Yeah. No, 100%.
Fighting over the general manager's office because there's only one in the building.
Exactly.
It's all, and like we talk about in matches, no wasted motion. There's no wasted motion on this show. At least how it played on Peacock. I don't know
Right.
how it played live,
Yeah.
but it's like match, backstage segment, match, backstage segment. Little, Taz and Cole. And JR
Well,
and
that's
King.
exactly what
Okay.
I was just about to say.
Go for it.
No, I was going to say the commentators on this. You almost have 4 Hall of Fame commentators at this point. 2 on SmackDown, Michael Cole and Taz, and then you got Jim Ross and Jerry Lawler, which is, I mean,
I'm not.
None of them are the best to ever do it.
no, but they've
Although you could say Jim, but I don't know. I
JR.
like Vinny.
JR.
I like VKM on the call.
Yeah, but VCam is
could-
what a maneuver!
Yeah.
It's a lot of that. It's not. Jim Ross is going to paint a picture.
I
No,
do
he's
one of
gonna
my
set up a
favorites.
match.
One of my favorites, and for all of his flaws, it's today. But that's neither
So the
here nor
next
there.
pay-per-view, I know you were talking about the next pay-per-view after that was Unforgiven. Just
Okay.
side notes that I'm trying to stay with it. The buy rate of this, just so we'll get into it, right before the main event, the buy rate of this was a little bit over 500,000, which was pretty big at that time.
For a pay per view, that's
buys?
nice.
500,000 pay-per-view buys, which is pretty big at the time. It actually ranks as the number 1 SummerSlam watched of all time. So
That's pay per view buys you're talking.
right, yeah, right. So it had some meat. Obviously, we're going through this card. It had some weight to it. It was very good.
Well, I think part of that. I mean, part of those numbers skewed no because this is right after WCW's gone, so now there's no competition. So you want to watch wrestling, and
It's not skewed. It's just the time period. You know what I mean? I think this pay per view.
But like obviously the numbers are going to jump, and it's going to be the highest from everything behind it because
Right.
behind it there were options. This
Yeah.
is the first summer or you have no options on mainstream wrestling.
So to do 500, that's not bad. I mean, you figure if the two companies together were doing 650, and now you're doing 500, so you lost.
You've converted a lot of fans, though.
Right.
You have. And how many on this card were from there? Booker T.
Well, from that were
Rob Van Dam.
WCW guys.
No, Rob Van Dam's ECW.
Oh, ECW,
You got-
right.
You got Jericho, Flair.
Jericho, Flair, Mysterio, Eddie, Benoit. RVD was ECW. You had Lance Storm was on WCW TV.
Right.
Booker T. Goldust at the end was on WCW TV, so he was a WWE
So
guy. That
there's
went
a
over.
high rate of
Um,
non-WWE workers
Yeah.
in this card.
well, you gotta remember, this is 2001 was when WWE bought WCW, and really they didn't buy. It's not like they bought all the contracts out. All they bought were the TV. They didn't have TV rights, so they couldn't do any shows on TNT or TBS. But they bought the video library and all the IP that came along with WCW. So that's basically what they got for the $3 million or whatever it was.
Right.
$3 million. The problem was Turner was still paying so many of these people. So like at the time, Booker T went right over because he said, "Oh, I'll forego my contract because I'm going to make more money going over there." But Flair, they couldn't sign Flair. They couldn't sign Mysterio. They couldn't sign. Maybe that's it that's on this particular card. But Hogan, Hall, Nash,
Mhm.
Luger, Buff Bagwell. I mean, there's a lot of guys that
Off the stuff.
Buff and stuff. Yeah. But there's a lot of guys that they couldn't sign. So all these WCW guys were the guys that either came over before the company folded, or they were guys that came
Right.
over right when the company
Flair
ended.
didn't Flair and Jericho come over before?
No, Flair came after the fact.
Flair came after Jericho.
Jericho
came
was
over before.
one of the ones to jump ship, and then Eddie. Remember Eddie, Benoit, Guerrero, and Perry Saturn. They came over there, the Radicals,
Saturn,
and that was
yes,
before.
man.
That was right before WCW folded. So that's why Vince. All these guys are on the pay per view, but there's no Goldberg, there's no Sting,
Right.
there's no
Right.
Luger, there's no. You know what I mean?
So the last thing before the main event that I'll just say is I don't know how much the viewers are going to take into consideration the Wrestling Observer newsletter, Dave
I
Meltzer,
think most of the people
Most people do,
right?
yeah.
So you know how he has his ratings.
Well, there's people like I'm not a huge fan of Meltzer because he reports things that are not necessarily fact,
Right.
but he reports them as fact.
Meltzer also just, I'll be quick about it. He just seems like stuck up a little. You know,
I think 100%. I think
Well,
he's
one of these people who's like, he's like
Well, you got
a
people.
wrestling purist, I guess.
Yeah.
You got a lot of people that respect and love Dave Meltzer within the business, and then you got a lot
Right.
of people like Jim Ross loves Dave.
Well,
Meltzer.
for that reason, I'm just going to tell you right now. In this match, in this card, I should say, Meltzer has a 4.25 for Triple H and Shawn Michaels.
well deserved.
Yep.
Alright.
He has Brock and Rock, which we're going to talk about in a minute, at 3.25.
Well, just before you, don't mean to interrupt you. Just before you go, Meltzer rates his matches on a 5-star scale.
Right,
So that
right.
just so people,
Just so
understand.
everybody knows,
Yeah.
it's a 5-star.
And it's like a 5-star scale with like you can do like a 4.1, a 3.2.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Well, a 4.25 is pretty good
Yeah.
in Meltzer's eyes. Just
Oh,
so
100%.
so just so we know. So other things. 2.75 was Jericho Flair. Benoit and RVD got a 3.5. The tag team match was a 3. Point being, the lowest rated was Undertaker Test, which we just spoke about before. It was a 2.25.
and that's still not even that bad.
right.
It's still too high.
Which
It's high. It's high.
It's still too high.
No, I agree with
Well,
you.
you
But
know.
I'm just saying. And what did you have the overall rating for the show that he gave it?
I do not have the overall rating. Rey Mysterio, Kurt Angle got a 3.75.
Yeah.
So I mean, very good numbers. Very,
Sure.
whatever. But let's get into it. The main event. The main event got 16 minutes as compared to the co-main event that got 27. But I digress. We call it a little passing of the torch, changing of the guard. Right. Brock Lesnar goes over The Rock. Jim, you could open it up for the Undisputed Championship.
I mean, two very. We've been saying. I feel like we're saying this about everybody, but
Right.
again, two of the greatest to do it, especially for that. I mean, Rock's top 3 all time, in my opinion. Right, top 5 all time.
I
It's
mean, in
hard-
a lot
it's
of
hard-
people's
hard to
opinion.
argue.
It's a hard argument. I mean, but he is one of the superstars that's responsible for getting them through the Attitude Era.
Well,
and-
think about it this way: The Rock's last match at WrestleMania 19 was phenomenal. Rock and Austin, and then he did one the next year at WrestleMania, but still one of the biggest matches on that WrestleMania card. So from WrestleMania 20 to WrestleMania 28, he did not wrestle. Came back at WrestleMania 28 and had the match of the night.
Yeah.
So I mean, and that's 10 years later, or
So-
8 years later.
two phenomenal athletes, both selling great. It's almost like they're trying to figure out who could outsell the
Oh,
other
yeah.
one. You know, and I love a good sell because it's another one of these things that just kind of has gone by the wayside in today's wrestling. Liked it, second best match of the card. I think obviously the right guy goes over for whether Rock was going to go fuck off to Hollywood or not. I think the right guy went over here.
100%. And this is, this
Yeah.
was like Rock's kind of swan song because who knew? They knew he was going to go film Walking Tall, and then he was going to come, and then they didn't know he was going to come back. They just got lucky that he came back because I think at the time the feeling was he'll kind of be in and out.
And is it fair to say that he's kind of responsible for the creation of WWE films?
No.
Because you don't think so? Because
No.
like Vince goes on to
No.
try to catch the
And-
same lightning in a bottle, but now he owns it all.
Well,
and you
here's-
can't leave me because you're still working for me.
The reason I can argue is because he started in '87 with No Holds Barred with Hogan.
Okay.
So that Hogan started WWE films because Hogan.
So Rocky 3 is probably responsible for WWE films.
Not necessarily. I think when Vince saw the potential of what Hogan could bring as because Hogan was bigger than wrestling. Because a lot of people, they weren't, I'm going to go watch WWF. I'm going to go watch Hulk Hogan. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And even
Right.
though Hogan was on the last match of the show every single night, it was still, I want to go watch Hulk Hogan because he was on the cover of Sports Illustrated, for Christ's sakes. I mean,
But I think that Brock being the youngest undisputed champion, right? I think the changing of the guard, I think the way they went about it was the right way, right?
this was definitely the passing of the torch.
I mean, you want to look how
It felt
how
like
to
that.
book a monster fast. Watch the way they fucking brought Brock Lesnar up.
But Brock is a monster totally in a different ball game than any other monsters we've seen.
well,
you know what I'm saying?
He didn't work like a big man. He worked like
Right.
anybody on any of those mid card guys.
Like Strowman, for example, is a monster. He's athletic, but he is no Brock Lesnar. And that's
Brock
clear
Lesnar's
as
a
day.
one-on-one.
You know what I mean? Yeah,
The
exactly.
closest thing to his like physical skill set and body and all that is probably Roman, but Brock's a true one of one.
Yeah, he is a one-on-one.
So you mentioned Hogan before, right? You just mentioned him. And I will say that when the broadcast went off the air that night, The Rock had a promo. He was being booed in the Nassau Coliseum. He had a promo, and in the promo he said, "The sing-along with The Rock is over." The crowd booed him. He walked off, didn't return for 6 months in January 2003, where he turned heel and then fought Hogan at WrestleMania. So,
well, not at WrestleMania. He wrestled Hogan at No Way Out after.
well, it led up to the rematch
Yeah.
at WrestleMania. Yes,
Yeah,
you're right.
Hogan,
You're right.
Hogan
Yeah.
Rock too. Yep.
And other quick notes of the card, or the aftermath of the card, we'll call it. The Undertaker went on to challenge Brock Lesnar that was his first title defense. So now he gets over on The Rock, and now we're headed upward and onward, and we're gonna take on Undertaker, which is just, when you really look at it, that's
The
kind of
Rock-
crazy.
The Rocket was strapped to his back.
Yeah.
Oh,
it's the
100%.
proverbial rocket.
And-
in the back.
Shawn Michaels, he would return to the ring full time at Survivor Series and win the World Heavyweight Championship in the first ever Elimination Chamber. That's what you were saying before. So overall, definitely the best SummerSlam, one of the best events that you can come up with. We talked about it, floor to ceiling. Any last notes before we close out our first flashback?
Well, typically because WrestleMania and SummerSlam are the two big events. Like they're not gimmicks. Like Survivor Series was a gimmick pay-per-view. Royal Rumble's a gimmick pay-per-view.
TLC is gimmicky.
Yeah, they're all a lot of gimmicky. But SummerSlam is just like a prestige pay-per-view, and like WrestleMania, it's either the start or the finish of like a jumping off point to lead to new storylines, or like the culmination of storylines. And this one very much felt like this is the jumping into the new stratosphere, because like I was saying in the open, Cena, Batista, and Randy Orton were all coming up within the next couple of weeks or months.
Yeah, they were all running OVW right now.
Right. And Lesnar was in that class with those guys. So this was like, this is going to be like, they didn't call it the new generation, but this is the new.
Well, the ruthless
The ruthless
aggression
aggression era,
was
right.
literally starting.
Right.
You have anything to close it out?
Last thing I want to say about Unforgiven, which I believe is that next month. Triple H battles RVD, right? This is that next Unforgiven, 2002 is when Triple H battles RVD.
I didn't look at the card, so I
I'm
don't
almost
remember.
positive it's that next Unforgiven. It's Unforgiven, I believe, 02. Match with RVD. Flair comes out, takes the sledge out of his hand, turns on RVD, which is
Yes.
ultimately going to
Yes.
become the beginning of Evolution. But that is my final thought on it. Quick little shout out to the sponsors: House of Havoc Podcasting, Tiger Pack Productions, Sachi Di Dinero, and Stay Thirsty Company.